Hello YouTube, Dozer here, bringing you a box opening video for Tales of Aria First Edition. You might also notice the audio is a bit different. We are testing out a new microphone setup, so whereas before in our box opening we had no audio, hopefully we'll have some nice crisp audio for you today. Again, this is a Tales First Edition box that we'll be opening up. I don't tend to make a habit of doing box openings on this channel, but I do plan on opening at least one box per set going on into the future, and just kind of giving me a chance to talk about the new set and seeing if we pull something interesting. So let's see how we do. So the first thing I want to talk about Tails is that I've started doing some testing for Nationals, and it's been a pretty good process so far. It's been nice to see some of the older characters possibly coming back into the limelight now that Chain is no longer going to be as big of a menace because of his whole banning of seeds and everything. So it'll be really interesting to see how the new meta shakes out. I'm having a feeling that the most powerful characters are not necessarily going to be the characters that are most powerful in the last meta, mainly just because the characters that were really powerful before were characters that could stand up to Chain. That could either race him down, being as aggro as possible, or they were characters that were able to really kind of like sidestep a lot of Chain's powerful aspects while also being able to do their own game plan. So Tank Prism was good in that situation, right? Because Tank Prism was able to not only block out a lot of damage against Chain, but also use her auras and stuff to be able to counteract a lot of the other characters like Dorinthia or Bravo, who could give Chain a run for his money. However, with the new set coming out, making all these defense reaction heavy, I'm going to break Cardinal Sin here. I'm going to cut open these packs just to make it a bit easier. Yeah, so Prism is seeming to have a lot of trouble doing the whole defense reaction playstyle, especially the aura playstyle. It's all very resource intensive, and as you might not know, the new characters in Aria are very big on having these anti-expensive cards, right? It's the ice mechanic. So here we got a nice Lexi to start things off, the character that I'm most interested in building. So you can get that camera to focus a bit better here. That's about as good as we've got it. That's all right. But yeah, Polar Blast, Rejuvenate, Burgeoning. I'll just try and sort the cards by type. I assume that if you're watching this video, you know what's in the set, so I'm not going to go through explaining every card. Although a foil Sigil of Suffering Red is definitely something that we like to see. Sigil of Suffering is one of the newer Runeblade cards that allows you to deal damage to your opponent on your own turn. So it's a pretty interesting thing to have access to, especially for like Viserai and things that really like having a ton of defense reactions. Yeah, as I was kind of saying, the whole defense reaction centric playstyle seems to be on the weaker side, just because having to pay 1 to block for 4 with something like a red Fate for Same, while also giving up all the flexibility of the pitch that the red brings for you, as opposed to running, say, like a blue unmovable or something. It's really not a good value proposition, I wouldn't say. See, I'm really not good. I saw someone open. Oh, that's smart. Okay, I gotta start opening like that. Shout out to Yazi, who showed me that's the way you open these things. Got a Shiver and Oldheim token. But yeah. The ice cards like Winter's Bite and Channel like Frigid, things like that, are all very threatening. Hey, we got a cold foil Coat of Frost to open things out. Let's get a sleeve for that bad boy. It's actually a very pretty cold foil. Would have liked to see it be a different card, but you know what? We'll take it. Cold foil Coat of Frost. Maybe we'll hit another something cool in here. It's always possible. But yeah, like specifically Channel Lake Frigid, I've made a video about that. I made a video about the other Frostbite mechanics, they really make Prism's old game plan really punished. The fact that you can be trying to do the game plan of trying to set up your auras and trying to set up like your vestige plays and your all these things are really popping off with Soul just makes it really difficult, because on their turn they can activate the Heart of Ice to turn all of your cards into costing one more, just kind of on demand. And if you were planning on using defense reacts to block out, you're really not going to be able to do that. And so it just really makes you a lot weaker when you're trying to do that game plan. But that's all right, because we will adapt and we will find a new way to make Prism stronger in the new meta. And if we can't, then, well, that'll be what it is. We got a Majestic Flash Freeze here. That's a dual fusion, Ice/Lightning fusion. You don't have to do both, but you definitely can. And it's something that I've seen people try and play with Lexi, who should be able to use both aspects of it, but I'm not big on this card. I don't tend to think that it's very strong compared to some of the other cards in the set. Got Token over there. And the reason I think that some of these cards are really strong and some of them aren't is that a lot of them require a lot of setup. So, for instance, if I was going to be playing Briar, right, I might want to run like a very lightning heavy build and rely on all the good non-attack action cards that were in the game already to try and make Briar good, but then I might also be trying to make a Earth heavy build where I go tall and I use all these big buff cards, or I might try and hybridize them, or I might try and not doing either of those things. So, it's a very interesting space to be in for deck building, because, if you're playing Prism, your matchups are very polarizing. And the problem with that in a new meta is that before everything's shaken out, you really don't have the flexibility to say, oh, my deck of, Tank Prism or any other version of Prism would struggle into any one matchup, because, you haven't had time to test it. And even if you have had time to test against a good number of different decks, all the different heroes can play so differently from one another that, and I think that's just Rainbow Foil. Yeah, Rainbow Foil. That you're not really able to get a good read on what's going on by just going off of a little bit of playtesting. A lot of this stuff is going to come down to theory, such as how many sixes can Briar efficiently run while still doing her game plan. Right, or how much damage can Lexi do to you while you're trying to rush her down, or how much can you make her block so it reduces the power of her big card hands. These are a lot of questions that we still haven't answered yet, and I'm hoping that as we test more, the polarizing matchups that Prism has can be kind of mitigated, because again, like if let's say, right, for instance, that Bravo and Oldheimer are the best characters in the meta. Like, let's just say. Well, then Prism's going to get a lot worse, because Prism's core mechanics are just straight up countered by Guardian. Well, with them having all the big attacks. And so if Prism wants to use her core abilities to do Heralds or Illusionist attacks, they're going to be very weak compared to Bravo and Oldheim's very big 7, 8, 9, 10 attack cards. And then you might say, oh, why don't we just pivot to the Aura game plan? Well, the problem with the Aura game plan is that, specifically against Ice, assuming Oldheim is popular, like we just said, that Pulse of Voltaven, good Majestic to get. Foil Blue Ice Quake, very good. The problem with that is that Oldheim has Ice, and Ice really counters everything Prism's trying to do with the Aura build. Your Auras already cost 4. They already are really awkward to play in a lot of circumstances. So the idea of having them all be that much more expensive on your turn, about having to cost 5 or 6 or more, just to play one Aura, you really can't do the key Aura game plan of make multiple Auras in a turn and then kind of snowball off of that. Because basically what you always had to do with the Auras was you had to make sure that your opponent couldn't take care of your Aura on one turn, get another Aura down, and now they have to kill 2 Auras at once, or they're not going to be able to stop your value engine. Problem is, not only are they harder to play multiples of, but you also aren't able to get as much value out of them once you do get them out, just by virtue of the fact that the ice makes them harder to get out, so you can't get as many out to snowball them faster or very fast. And then you also can't even snowball with them once they're out, because with frostbites or like frigid, it makes attacking with your auras a lot harder. And so, you know, it's a hard ask to be able to say that, oh, you know, all you have to do is switch to just the auras. Now, personally, I have not practiced against Oldheim enough with or Tank Prism to see if it or just even full Aura Prism to see if that matchup is really as bad as I think it is in practice or in theory. But it definitely doesn't feel like a give me matchup, right? It feels like it's definitely going to be something you have to work to win, as well as Bravo, even with the new tools. So, well, I guess what I'm saying here is, because of how polarizing Prism's matchups are, and because of how unique and how these new characters play in relation to all the other characters in the game, it's going to be very interesting to see which build of Prism ends up being the best one to take to a tournament. And notice how I didn't say which version of Prism is the best, because the thing about Prism is that, again, because she's so matchup dependent, you're going to run into a lot of situations where you have a build of a deck that's very strong. It might have the best matchup spread of any one particular deck. But if that build doesn't match up well into the meta, if you go to a tournament, you're not necessarily going to be able to win against the field. Because the whole point of a tournament is to do well into what people are bringing to the tournament. And if you can't do that, then no matter how good your deck is in a certain matchups or how well you think you predicted the meta, if your deck can't beat the popular decks, or the ones that people are actually bringing, then you're not really going to get any distance in that tournament. You're going to be eliminated from the top percentage. And oh, that was an open hold. There we go. So yeah, that's kind of the thing there. What I'll also say is that this is probably the time where a Prism counter is going to be doing pretty well. I feel like some of the decks that didn't do well into Prism were kept out of the meta by the older decks, such as Chain, and the things that did well into Chain. And now with the meta shifting, it'll be interesting to see which of those decks come around and can force Prism out of the meta even, because again, Prism struggles into things that either do a ton of dominated damage or block all of her phantasms, such as again like the Guardian or the Brutes. But she also can often struggle against these like hyper aggro decks, especially like aggro Katsu or things. They definitely are no easy time for her to take care of. And if Prism herself, because the existence of ice, is forced to move over to a more not aggressive necessarily, not aggro exactly, but just a more Herald heavy game plan in order to punish these no block strategies like Lexi, or these strategies like Briar that really want to be able to go all out, attack out, and then get a lot of value off their blocks, then maybe the Herald version won't be so good. But it's the best thing you might have in a tournament environment. And maybe it won't be. Maybe the Aura Prism will still be the best version, and maybe that'll be, and some variant of that will be the best thing. But it's perfectly possible that it's not going to be that way. Red Shield Bone Foil, that's very nice. But yeah, I haven't really seen anything terribly interesting in here so far. Expose the Elements, we can talk about that for a minute though. So Expose the Elements is a very interesting Majestic. Effectively, it lets you, especially Oldheim, threaten to destroy pieces of equipment. What's interesting about that is that normally a lot of characters are very reliant on their equipment. Think Mask of Momentum, think the new Ranger headpiece of New Horizon. You can think about even the shield, the Ram's Head shield that the Oldheim uses, right? They are these very powerful things that you have access to using that if you're able to turn those off and expose the elements, you can be in a really good position to just really hurt your opponent. So this card, especially even Lexi can use it, right? Because you basically, it says if exposed the elements was fused with an ice card, destroy an equipment card with 0 defense, controlled by target hero unless they pay 2. So if you know your opponent's tapped out, then you can threaten them with this card. And it costs 2 to play it, to be sure, and it's an instant so it doesn't block. But, and the Earth part lets you like lower the defense of a card, kind of with no counterplay to it. So over time, like you could play this card and destroy a Tunic if you're playing Oldheim. Your opponent doesn't have a way to stop it. Hey, foil ToA Harvest. That's very nice. Put that over here. So when you're playing against Oldheim, especially with Prism, where you're relying on your Vestige, you're relying on your Footsteps, you're relying on all these different things, you really can't afford to tap out against him because he might just flash this on your turn and break your equipment, and now you're really behind the 8 ball, as if you weren't already. That's another reason I'm feeling like Prism's going to be very vulnerable going into this new meta. Yeah, that card's really cool. ToA Harvest, on the other hand, is an interesting card. You can think about it as effectively a really big Gorganian tome. Instead of costing 0 to replace itself, it costs 1 blue pitch to replace itself, and as long as 3 other cards, or 2 other cards. Because you have to put a tome, you have to play this, and put a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck, and then you draw 3. So you pay a card, you play the card, you pay, play, and then you shuffle a card from your arsenal, so it's 3 cards to draw 3 cards. So it's basically like a Gorganian tome, but it lets you go through a lot more of your deck all at once, and it blocks and pitches. So it's got a bit more of that upside without that big opportunity cost that you'd sometimes run into where you can't play anything. As far as the whole set overall goes, I think as a draft set, it's a pretty fun set. You know, you can definitely play out the different matchups and everything, and you can have these different builds of the lightning versus the earth versus the ice, depending on which character you're leaning towards or which element you're leaning towards. But as far as constructed goes, it kind of remains to be seen if this is going to be a good set. Some of the new heroes are very fun, like Lexi's very fun, with just how fiddly she is and how all the different build paths allow her to play. But we got a Fulminate here. Buzzbolt there. But the thing is that a lot of these cards are just simply not very exciting to me, especially with the fuse mechanic, because a lot of the fuse mechanic stuff makes you have to play these very clunky, awkward, big hand turns, and some of the characters just rewarded for it more than others. Especially when I played against Briar so far, it's been pretty astonishing to see how impactful these embodiment of Earth tokens are. The fact that she kind of breaks the normal mold and the normal conventions of saying, oh, well, you get an HP lead and then you use your HP to take some damage to try and finish someone off by throwing bigger and bigger turns at them. But with Briar, you can't really do that, because the moment you start letting her hit you multiple times on a turn, her defense becomes extremely powerful. So it kind of incentivizes you as the person playing against the Briar to be able to constantly block her out and just chip her down over time. Like, you kind of are incentivized to fatigue her out and kind of block out. Which, while I'm not a stranger to that playstyle because of the matchup against Chain with Tank Prism, it's not how I prefer to play the game by any means. So we'll see if that becomes the best way to play against Briar, but that's how I'm feeling that it's looking like it's going to be. We're almost down to the end of the box here. We only got 4 packs left. So let's hope we pull something spicy, because I was hoping to pull that New Horizon so I could play the new Lexi build right off the bat, but might just have to wait until Unlimited comes out. Because I did promise myself I'd only buy 1 box of each set, just to keep it even and not really kind of throw my money down the drain. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these cards, especially with the price of the boxes going down so much, I don't know if you've seen that, but a lot of these boxes are going down in price. There's really not as much of an incentive to try and buy them for the singles. I'd rather just buy the singles themselves and let other people kind of take the risk on opening boxes for product. Oh, Awakening. So I have a lot of problems with Awakening as a card. So Awakening is a 2-cost Guardian instant. Only Oldhim can run this card currently. But it's an Earth Fusion. So you're like, oh, well, an Earth Fusion, that must mean it's kind of clunky to use. And you'd be wrong. Because Awakening basically says, if you have less HP than your opponent, create Seismic Surge tokens equal to the difference of HP. If this was fused, you get double that many tokens, but let's just say you're 4 HP down on your opponent, and you have Tectonic Plating. So now you have a Seismic Surge in play already from your Awakening, and you've got 4 more. So now you've got 5 Seismic Surge tokens. And that's pretty interesting on its own, but then it says search your deck for a Guardian attack action card with cost less than or equal to the number of Seismic Surge tokens you control. Reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. So if you're 4 HP or 5 HP down on your opponent, you can play this card and search out a Spinal Crush. And it's free on your next turn. Now, that's kind of insane, because also it costs 2. So you could pay to use your shield, float 2, threatening your defense reaction ability on your hero. And then now with Awakening, you can simply, you know, casually summon up any attack that you want from your deck. You summon Glacial Footsteps or anything. You don't even have to fuse it to get the value. Whereas a lot of these other fusion cards, they don't do anything if you don't fuse. You know, Bramble Spark, Frazzle, you know, they have no effects if they don't fuse. So the fact that Awakening, yes, it's an instant, so it should do something if it doesn't fuse, but its upside is so powerful. It's so flexible. I mean, a straight up tutor in a Flesh and Blood deck is kind of insane, and it's kind of unprecedented for how low cost that is, for how big of an upside it gives. Because not only does it give you the card, it makes it free to cast on your next turn. So that's kind of a lot to deal with. Anybody who's played against this card knows that it's kind of like a comeback mechanic in a game that's supposed to be about, or at least that has been about, you know, building up advantage over time and pressure over time. And the fact that you can have such a drastic tempo swing just kind of built into your class is kind of incredible, considering how strong Oldhim was already going to look with all the tools he already had. So I definitely don't love seeing that. We got another cold foil? Wow, another common cold foil. Well, we can't be sad about that. 2 cold foils in 1 box is definitely what you like to see. Not that having 2 cold foil common equipments is what you want to see. So let's get a sleeve for this bad boy here. Wow, that's really lucky and unlucky at the same time. Coat of Frost and Cracker Jacks as our 2 cold foils. Let's try and bring that up a bit closer to the camera so you can kind of appreciate that card's cold foiling here. Let me turn the overhead light on. I was trying to keep that off the screen here just for the let's see here, come on. Either way, 2 cold foils in a box. It's nice to see. Sorry if I got the non-cold foil card, but I took your cold foil common from you, so I hope you don't feel too upset about it. But yeah, I think Guardian's going to be the strongest class in the game, let alone from the set going forward. We'll see how it handles dealing with Briar. You know, anything's possible, but it just seems like he has all the tools in the game to really make waves in the meta. And yeah, so that's kind of been the Tales of Aria box opening. Again, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed getting to have a bit of that pack opening fix without having to spend your own money. I am still in the process of doing all my testing for Nationals. Again, I asked a couple of you guys in one of my past videos, you know, do you prefer seeing gameplay in paper or in TTS, Tabletop Simulator? And a lot of you guys overwhelmingly said that you did not like seeing Tabletop Simulator gameplay. So I've been trying to hold off and really find some paper matches, but since everyone wants to try all the new cards, pretty much everybody's testing with Tabletop Simulator. So it'll be still some time, but I'll try and put out some more theory videos. I've got a build of Prism that I've been revisiting that seems like it might be a good meta call, and I'll keep you guys posted on it. So thanks again for watching. Stay cool and have a good day. Take care. Bye.